Good evening, wanderers. Death and the world beyond it. It is the great mystery of our world. No one knows what lies beyond the veil of life, and some have spent their entire lives trying to solve its mysteries. Is it our unwillingness to accept our mortality, or perhaps fear of judgment, that drives us to such lengths? In tonight's tale, Gateway of the Mind, a group of scientists try to find out what lies beyond and try to open a communication with God. They will find that some doorways are never meant to be opened, and sometimes we should leave well enough alone. So let us take a peek beyond the curtain and hope that we find safe passage on the other side. In 1983, a group of deeply pious scientists conducted a radical experiment in an undisclosed facility. The scientists had theorized that a human without any access to their senses or ways to perceive stimuli would be able to perceive the presence of God. They believed that our five senses clouded our awareness of eternity, and without them, a human could actually establish contact with God by thought. An elderly man who claimed to have nothing left to live for was the only test subject to volunteer. To purge him of his senses, the scientists perform a complex operation in which every sensory nerve connection to the brain was surgically severed. Although the test subject remained full muscular function, he could not see, hear, smell, taste, or feel, with no possibility to communicate or even sense the outside world. He was alone with his thoughts. Scientists monitored him as he spoke about his state of mind in jumbled, slurred sentences that he couldn't even hear. After 4 days, the man claimed he could hear hushed, unintelligible voices in his head. Assuming it was the onset of psychosis, the scientists paid little attention to the man's concerns. 2 days later, the man cried that he could hear his dead wife speaking to him. And even more, he could communicate back. The scientists were intrigued, but not convinced, until the subject started to name dead relatives of the scientists. He repeated personal information to the scientists that only their dead spouses or parents would have known. At this point, a sizable portion of the scientists left the study. After a week of conversing to the deceased for his thoughts, the subject became distressed, saying the voices were overwhelming. In every waking moment, his consciousness was bombarded by hundreds of voices that refused to leave him alone. He frequently threw himself against the wall, trying to elicit a pain response. He begged the scientists for sedatives so that he could escape the voices by sleeping. This tactic worked for 3 days, until he had severe night terrors. The subject repeatedly said that he could see and hear the deceased in his dreams. Only a day later, the subject began to scream and claw at his non-functional eyes, hoping to sense something in the physical world. The hysterical subject now said that the voices of the dead were deafening and hostile, speaking of hell and the end of the world. At one point, he yelled, "No heaven, no forgiveness," for 5 hours straight. He continually begged to be killed, but the scientists were convinced that he was close to establishing contact with God. After another day, the subject could no longer form coherent sentences. Seemingly mad, he began to bite off chunks of flesh from his arm. The scientists rushed into the test chamber and strapped him to the table so he could not kill himself. After a few hours of being tied down, the subject halted his struggling and screaming. He stared blankly at the ceiling, as teardrops silently streaked across his face. For 2 weeks, the subject had to be manually rehydrated due to the constant crying. Eventually, he turned his head, and despite his blindness, made focused eye contact with the scientist for the first time in the study. He whispered, "I have spoken with God, and he has abandoned us." and his vital signs stopped. There was no apparent cause of death. Thank you for listening. I hope you'll join me on another stroll soon. If you have any ideas on where we would like to go next, or any suggestions for the channel, I am all ears. Please, see you soon.